At least 120 deaths have been confirmed, with over 170 people still missing after catastrophic flooding events in central Texas this past weekend. Remnant moisture of Tropical Storm Barry merged with Tropical East Pacific remnant moisture over the U.S. state of Texas. This caused the Guadalupe River to swell to near unprecedented levels. The Guadalupe River runs for approximately 230 miles through a region that sits between Austin and San Antonio, Texas, starting in Kerr County and ending along the Gulf Coast. It's nicknamed Flash Flood Alley because the terrain makes it vulnerable to inundation. In addition to the deadly floods in Texas, North Carolina saw 4 tornadoes and flooding that officials say is a once-in-a-thousand-year event. It left thousands without power and 4 deaths have been confirmed. Also, in a separate storm system event, New Mexico's mountain resort town Ruidoso experienced deadly flooding on July 8th. 3 people, including 2 children, died after flash flooding swept through the village. In this video, we'll examine what caused these severe weather events and underscore how they became so deadly in such a short amount of time. Hello, and welcome to Deadliest Disasters. Tropical Storm Barry was a short-lived tropical cyclone that caused significant flooding in southeastern Mexico. The second named storm of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, Barry developed on June 28th from a tropical wave over the Bay of Campeche. Prior to formation, Barry's precursor disturbance caused flooding on the Yucatan Peninsula and Belize. After forming, Barry strengthened slightly and approached the Mexican state of Veracruz before making landfall near Tampico, Tamaulipas. The short-lived storm dissipated after landfall over the rugged terrain of Mexico. Barry was responsible for 5 deaths in Mexico and at least $5.64 million in damage. Remnant moisture of Barry later merged with tropical East Pacific remnant moisture over the U.S. state of Texas. Remnant moisture from this system caused devastating flooding in central Texas that killed at least 120 people and left over 170 missing as of July 10th. But how did a small tropical disturbance lead to one of the deadliest floods central Texas has ever seen? Thursday, July 3rd, the National Weather Service issued a flood watch early Thursday afternoon at 1:18 p.m. that highlighted Kerrville, among other locations, as being at risk of flash flooding through the night into Friday. That watch forecasted 5 to 7 inches of rainfall for the event. On Friday, July 4th, a flash flood warning upgraded from the earlier watch was issued for parts of Kerr County at 1:14 a.m. on Friday morning. Shortly after, a flash flood emergency warning was issued for Kerr County at 4:03 a.m., followed by one specifically for Kerrville at 5:34 a.m. Ultimately, the most deluged parts of Texas saw as much as 15 inches of rain, more than double what was forecasted the day prior. Even a few inches of rain can cause flash flooding due to a combination of factors, including rainfall intensity, topography, and soil conditions. When rain falls faster than the ground can absorb it, the excess water accumulates and flows downhill, often channeling into low-lying areas like streams and rivers. If this happens in a short period, especially in dry desert areas with impervious surfaces, the water can rise rapidly, causing flash flooding. Residents need to take special precaution when in lower elevation area, especially one prone to flooding, as well as areas near rivers and streams. Even in an area with no rain, flash flooding can occur from a storm upstream of a flood-prone area. On Friday morning at 4:45 a.m., one gauge along the Guadalupe River in Kerrville shows the water levels hit 23.4 feet above normal level at about 45 minutes before the warning specific to the town was issued. Waters in that spot almost certainly crested above the 23-foot mark, but the gauge did not record data for 3 hours between 4:45 a.m. and 7:45 a.m. before picking back up its data measurements. One of the single greatest losses of life occurred at Camp Mystic, which is located right on the banks of the Guadalupe River. Their website states, Camp Mystic is a private Christian summer camp for girls. Established in 1926, Mystic is nestled among cypress, live oak, and pecan trees in the hill country of west central Texas on the banks of the beautiful Guadalupe River. Mystic is located near the geographical center of Texas, 18 miles northwest of Kerrville. By midday, Friday, July 4th, at Camp Mystic, about 107 game wardens and an aviation group were able to enter the camp and start rescue and recovery missions. From professionals to the public, many accounts of heroism and bravery were recorded. A 22-year-old woman was saved after clinging to a tree overnight. A young girl was found after floating on a mattress for hours. A mother and her 19-year-old son survived by clinging onto each other and a tree. A counselor at Camp Mystic helped evacuate her 14 young campers to safety. Scott Ruskin, a 26-year-old Coast Guard rescue swimmer based in Corpus Christi, Texas, was credited with saving 165 people from Camp Mystic. At least 27 campers and counselors died during the floods, and officials said Tuesday that 5 campers and 1 counselor have still not been found. The camp had a total of 557 campers and more than 100 staffers at the time between its Guadalupe and Cypress Lake locations. Most were able to make it to safety before it was too late, but for a group that was closest to the river's edge, the floodwater was too intense to escape. But the public is still asking, why was this camp situated in Flood Alley not better prepared for such an event? Why weren't they evacuated sooner? The answers are still unclear. Texas inspectors verified that Camp Mystic had a written emergency plan just 2 days before the deadly flood. Records released on Tuesday, July 8th show the camp met state regulations for disaster procedures, but details of the plan remain unclear. Despite warnings from the National Weather Service, Camp Mystic did not relocate its more than 650 campers and staff when they first received the warnings. 5 years of inspection reports released to the press do not offer any details of disaster plans at the camp, raising new questions about its preparedness ahead of the torrential July 4th rainfall. The Department of State Health Services released records Tuesday showing the camp complied with a host of state regulations regarding procedures to be implemented in case of a disaster. Among them, instructing campers what to do if they need to evacuate and assigning specific duties to each staff member and counselor. The Texas Administrative Code lays out youth camp licensing requirements. There's no specific requirement involving weather radios or any mention of flooding specifically, but a written disaster plan is required. However, the plan is not required to be submitted to the state, but must be posted on site. As early as 3:30 a.m. on July 3rd, more than 24 hours earlier, the National Weather Service warned of a potential isolated flooding event. That afternoon at 2:30 p.m., more than 12 hours before the floods, the National Weather Service issued an official flood watch for western portions of the hill country, including Kerr Country. It forecast 1 to 3 inches of rain was possible, but it also warned it couldn't rule out the chance isolated areas would see as much as 5 to 7 inches. That danger prompted at least one of the roughly 18 camps along the Guadalupe River to move dozens of campers to higher ground. Camp Mystic did not do that. They were especially hard hit when the river rose from 14 feet to 29.5 feet within 60 minutes in the early morning hours of the disaster when children would have been in their cabins. Flooding on that stretch of the Guadalupe starts at about 10 feet. The first flash flood warning came at 11:42 p.m. just before midnight for Medina, Texas, just south of Kerr Country, urging people there to move immediately to higher ground. By 1:14 a.m., flash flood warnings went out to Ingram and Hunt, as well, where several summer camps, including Camp Mystic, are located. Again, the warnings urged people to seek higher ground. It wasn't until 3 a.m., nearly 2 hours after the warning was issued, that it hit 10 feet, what NOAA labels its minor flooding stage. That also marks the action stage, the level at which NOAA says when reached by a rising stream, some type of mitigation becomes necessary to prepare for possible significant activity. From there, the river continued to rise. A wall of water overwhelmed people in cabins, tents, and trailers along the river's edge. Some survivors were found clinging to trees. Survivors have described the floods as a pitch-black wall of death and said they received no emergency warnings. Officials have come under scrutiny about why residents in youth summer camps along the river were not alerted sooner than 4 a.m. or told to evacuate. Officials noted that the public can grow weary from too many flooding alerts or forecasts that turn out to be minor. Kerr County Judge Rob Kelly said authorities were shocked by the ferocity of the floods. Judge Kelly said, quote, "We had no reason to believe that this was going to be anything like what's happened here. None whatsoever," unquote. The potential for heavy rains had put precautions in motion as the state activated an emergency response plan and moved resources into the central Texas area. The state inspected Camp Mystic on July 2nd, the same day the Texas Division of Emergency Management activated emergency response resources ahead of the anticipated flooding. But the inspection found no deficiencies or violations at the camp in a long list of health and safety criteria. A DSHS inspector signed off on the inspection, noting that all criteria had been met. The 3 points for the required emergency plan are as follows. Number 1. Is there a written plan of procedures to be implemented in case of a disaster, serious accident, epidemic, or fatality formulated and posted in the camp's administrative on-site office or location? Answer, yes. Number 2. Are all camp staff and volunteers made aware of the plan of emergency to be implemented during the staff training program or volunteer briefing? Answer, yes. And number 3, is there documentation of this training kept at the camp's administrative on-site office or location? Answer, yes. Camp Mystic did not respond to requests from the media for comment on its emergency plan. The camp notes that it is licensed by the state and member of Camping Association for Mutual Progress, which says its goal is to raise health and safety standards for summer camps. The American Camp Association said Tuesday that Camp Mystic is not accredited with that organization, whose standards focus on safety and risk management. Spokesperson Lauren McMillan declined to say whether the camp previously had been accredited with that association, which describes itself as the only nationwide accrediting organization for all year-round and summer camps. Information from Camp Mystic spokespeople is very convoluted or missing entirely. There are a lot of contradictions when asked about specific licensing and safety procedures. The public is still wondering why the National Weather Service's multiple warnings were left to be ignored. Along with the deadly Texas flooding, North Carolina has experienced major flooding from Tropical Storm Chantal. Tropical Storm Chantal brought an extraordinary amount of rainfall in a very short time, Southern Pines Mayor Taylor Clement said in a news release. "This is one of the most intense weather events Moore County has ever seen," said Clement. The storm, which made landfall as a tropical storm early July 6th in South Carolina and then moved inland, had weakened to a post-tropical cyclone by the afternoon of July 7th and was moving northeast over Chesapeake Bay toward eastern Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey, where there were numerous flood watches posted. The worst effects of the storm have so far been felt in central North Carolina, where tens of thousands of people lost electric power and at least 4 tornadoes were confirmed, authorities said. The storm downed trees and power lines and swamped hundreds of roads. A 5th North Carolina death was linked Tuesday to massive flooding that still had 65 roads closed 2 days after remnants from Tropical Storm Chantal spawned 4 tornadoes and dumped more than 10 inches of rain, forcing at least 200 rescues in the hardest hit areas. Leaders in a town in Moore County under a steady torrent of rain as the storm stalled and then pivoted northward Sunday afternoon called the deluge a 500 to 1,000 year flood event. Southern Pines alone was hit with nearly 500 million gallons of water in just hours on Sunday, knocking down a dam and a retaining wall that led to businesses flooding. Also, in a separate storm system event, New Mexico's mountain resort town Ruidoso has experienced deadly flooding on July 8th. 3 people, including 2 children, died after flash flooding swept through the village of Ruidoso, authorities said. The fatalities occurred as floodwaters surged through the area, driven by heavy monsoonal rains falling on burn-scarred terrain from last year's South Fork and Salt fires. The burn scars do not allow water to seep into the earth. Instead, it creates a constant flow that contributes to intense flooding. The victims include a man estimated to be between 40 and 50 years old, a 7-year-old boy, and a 4-year-old girl. All 3 were reportedly swept downstream during the flooding event. All 3 victims were reported missing at the Riverside RV park. Do you think public officials should have done more to notify the people and try to mitigate these deaths? Or do people need to take responsibility in their own hands to evacuate flood-prone areas before it gets to a catastrophic level? Sadly, many had to pay with their lives as search, rescue, and recovery efforts still persist in these devastated areas. Thank you all for tuning in. Please like and subscribe and let me know what other topics you'd like me to cover. This has been Deadliest Disasters.